Hello and welcome, I'm the Imperor, and I have recently, at the beginning of 2025, started the process of migrating to Linux. Initially, the idea was only to do a dual boot type system, which is what I ran starting at the end of February to at the end about of March 2025. But then we thought, well, wouldn't it be interesting to start yet another community challenge and see how I will fare if I just fully remove my Windows backup partition that I did have up running and I did use from time to time in parallel to Linux. The initial reason that I wanted to dual boot was actually streaming and video recording and all that, because, well, trying it on a Linux, it didn't quite work until I figured out that one of my webcams was broken. Or at least it didn't quite work too well with Linux. So once I replaced it with the camera that I'm using right now for this video to capture me, it all started working pretty damn flawlessly, and I haven't had any issues since that would have been Linux specific or related. So having replaced everything I needed, it was time. It was time. And I did not go back to Windows anymore. It just sat there, taking up space. And space was actually something that I started to need more and more. So with the community challenge finished, I set out to work, and a few weeks ago I just went ahead and formatted the drive that Windows is on, or was on, should I say. Now I'm using that particular hard disk to store basically miscellaneous stuff and some Python scripts and all that kind of stuff that you sometimes need but not always need. It's a little bit of a cupboard, a digital little cupboard now. I did have one particular point of worry or contention rather, where I feared that if I did delete Windows, there would be a day where I'm like, damn, now I need it for this specific thing. But since we ran it in dual boot for such a long time, I mean, 2 months is a lot, really. It didn't feel like there were any things left that I would be missing. Every single program and every single workflow that I had needed for content creation, for work, for anything else, I had already transferred beforehand, including emulation for Rebelle 7, which I use for drawing during the art streams, as well as working off of different systems that aren't within the Adobe framework, for example, which was one of the larger things that I had a lot set up, all my PSD files, everything already nice and neatly aligned, and I already knew how to use all the shortcuts and all that kind of stuff. So my workflows were pretty tied in on certain products, and I thought that would be very painful to switch over, but it didn't take all that much time, and at the end of the day, I am now free. Can you believe it? Actually, goddamn free. I haven't really missed Windows because everything I need to do, I do under Linux. Sometimes it takes a little while to find a program that really replaces what I needed before. Sometimes it's a little bit of a hybrid situation. For example, all the Adobe products I've been using, I've replaced. I haven't really looked at Illustrator yet, but I'm sure I will find something once the need actually arises to create a nice vector graphic again. But for, let's say, Premiere Pro, I have switched over to KDENlive. I did try Davinci Resolve, which does have a native Linux client, but there were some issues I will talk about a little bit later in this video. And Photoshop I have replaced with GIMP or Krita respectively, depending on what exactly I'm trying to achieve. Where I have a little bit of a hybrid situation going is Microsoft Office, because while the LibreOffice suite, which comes with my Linux Mint, and I've been pretty happy with it, does most of what I need it to do, there's one feature in Word that I really appreciate. It's called the editor. So basically all the programs do have a little check on your spelling, right? But I also want a little bit more of a style spelling, and the editor does very minor edits to what I do, so it preserves my style overall while helping me iron out some basic grammatical errors that I keep repeating, and I'm very happy with that. So what I usually do is I write in LibreOffice, then I copy it over to the MS365 Office suite in an online tab, and just run the editor over it and copy it back. So I don't save anything there in the cloud or whatever. I just use the editor feature. So is there anything that still isn't quite working as I would like it to? Honestly, not really. All the hardware that I have had, all the issues that I have had, I found fixes for, and ever since my big first video on Linux, I haven't really encountered any major issues except for one, which again, a little bit later in this video, where honestly my entire system kind of imploded. I booted the system and all I saw was the Linux Mint loading screen, and it just kept going. This loading screen time was weird. It just did not want to load anymore. You can think about AI what you like, and as a creator, I certainly have my problems with it. I don't use it for my creative journey, I will say. However, for helping troubleshoot and helping me walk through things on Linux and how to approach them, it has been invaluable. Honestly, AI as I give you this message, tell me what it means, and the AI tells me, okay, this means this and that, and then I put it in the context of my actual problem, and that shaping the kind of troubleshooting steps I get helps. It's not perfect by any means, don't get me wrong, it doesn't help immediately all the times, but it gets me on the right track really quickly. So what did actually happen? I was trying to install Davinci Resolve, which is kind of weird. They have a Ubuntu client. I did try that, but for some reason the install just did not quite work out, and it was installed, but it didn't start. So I figured, okay, well, if it's not even starting, it needn't be installed. I try and keep a lean system where I only really have installed what I want, which, by the way, Linux does wonderfully. It's lovely. No bloatware. Ooh, I love it. And while uninstalling that, this is where one of the upsides of Linux also comes a bit of a problem, because somehow, and I don't know quite how, because I only really use the official uninstall scripts that come with the Davinci Resolve installation. I'm not blaming Davinci Resolve for anything, don't get me wrong here. I think this is 100% a user error thing that I did, but trying to uninstall it, somehow a element that is required for rendering the graphical interface on Linux got also removed. What I had to do with the help of AI chatbots was trying to get into the system on a console level, so no graphical interface, no beautiful buttons to click around with, only the command line input. And once I had that going, it was pretty easy to navigate from there. So my system was still there. That was good to know. It was really only the graphical interface that didn't seem to work anymore. And that was something that AI also helped me figure out really quickly, that is the issue. Now, the problem on how to resolve that is where AI entirely failed me. The suggestions I got might have been good, I don't know, but it tried to push me into a direction where I would reinstall certain libraries and whatnot to get the graphical interface to run again, and that did not work for the life of me. Either, again, I did it wrong, I didn't fully understand, or it just wasn't the approach that was needed at that moment. So instead, at some point, I remembered, hey, wait, Linux comes with something called Timeshift, which is, for those of you who do not know, is a integrated backupping system, which just creates snapshots of your system every so often, depending on how you configured it. I think it's very generously set up when you start it, which can quickly bloat your system. So definitely go check out the settings on that and make sure that you have the space for whatever amount of snapshots it's trying to create for your system. And then when you have that going, it's super easy to roll back from there. So instead of trying to get this, whatever library was broken now, back to working, I instead suggested, hey, we have Timeshift snapshots. Shouldn't we maybe just roll back on that? And hey, presto, that was the way to go. So the really cool thing about Timeshift is that it is so painless and it works so flawlessly. I am completely blown away by this, honestly. First of all, it's free. It's not some proprietary program that you need. It just comes with Linux. The snapshots that I had, luckily, because I set it up earlier. I set it up when I started Linux and I was looking, okay, I don't need hourly backups. I don't need 2 days. I don't need all this stuff. I will set it a little bit generously. I will keep 2 daily backups. I will keep 1 weekly, 1 monthly. Yeah, that's gonna be fine. That's what I thought. And luckily, the issue that I encountered was within the last 2 or 3 hours, right after my last good snapshot. So this was a luck-based situation. I've since changed how I do this, a little bit more on that in a moment. And I rolled back to that using the command line, and I rebooted, and my system was back. Now, of course, as with all backups, everything that happened between the 2 hours that my system failed and the last snapshot, everything in between there was gone. Which means I lost about, I would say, half an hour of editing work on a video I was working on. That is something that happens with all backup solutions. However, just truly, it was maybe 5 commands in the command line, and we're back. No problem. It didn't take a lot of time. It was entirely painless. I think I just said that before. Now, as I said, this experience has forced me, or rather made me reconsider my backup situation. So ever since we've removed Windows, I have a few disks free again, among which is 1 terabyte SSD, which I have now dedicated to be a bit of a data grave and the place where I store my Timeshift backups. And I'm now doing a much more generous amount of backupping, meaning 8 hourly backups, way more dailies, and so on and so forth. This might still be a little bit too few for a lot of you, but I think generally this is fine for me now. Another thing, just comparing the process of restoring my system with Timeshift compared to what I had to do in the past with Windows machines. First off, the system restore thing that Windows comes with, and I'm mainly talking about workstations, so end user things, meaning Windows 10 Pro maximum. I'm not talking about Windows Server at all here, but the system restore function that Windows comes with by default sucks. It sucks so hard because it doesn't quite do exactly what you would assume it does. It restores your system. It's in the name. What it doesn't do is file restore. So you are definitely going to lose way more in terms of your own work using system restore than you do with Timeshift, because Timeshift is a honest to God, just a direct snapshot of your system. So it's not just restoring your system files, but it also retains your stuff, which is really dang fantastic. I've never really had much success with system restore on the Windows. What I usually went for was having a proprietary backup solution like Macrim Backup that I ran, not an endorsement, and then I would try and restore either off of those backups, or I would even more often than not, because I usually felt like if Windows failed to the point where something was so rotten in it that the system cannot be booted again, I generally felt much safer completely nuking the entire install, installing from scratch, and then just going into the file backup of my backup solution and restoring files directly, both for programs through app data and local, as well as for the files themselves. Seeing in Windows what exactly went wrong is nearly impossible a lot of the time. And like, what if you are just restoring to a point where the problem is going to arise again? And I did not have that feeling with Linux, because I knew exactly what was going wrong, because the system allows me through command line inputs to figure out exactly what is going on. And that is a level of insight into my own system that I do not think I ever felt I had on Windows. So just going with the scorched earth tactic on Windows restores was always my go-to. I don't feel I have to do this anymore on Linux. I feel Timeshift is actually a solution, if not even the solution. Now, overall, it took me around 2 hours from system failure to full restoration of my system. The reason it took me 2 hours to restore is also because I first tried all the other troubleshooting steps that the AI did try and suggest me to do. Had I gone directly for a time shift, I might not even had to have cancelled my D&D session. It might have been a measure of maybe 10-15 minutes to from system failure to system restore. And then I might have been able to play that evening. 1 month later, what is my verdict on Linux? Honestly, it's exceptional. It is such a smooth, good experience. I know that people who have watched the first video or who are watching this video will be raising their eyebrows maybe a little bit because they, well, my guy, you've been talking about problems. So many problems. What was wrong? Yes, I have been talking about a lot of problems, but what you might be missing on the problems is, first of all, these are nearly all user error. I will exclude the broken webcam that I had to find out was broken, but everything else was user error. It is easy to troubleshoot if you're willing to put that time in, but that is something that happens with all systems that you could be using, be it Mac or Windows, it doesn't really matter. If you have an issue, you will have to go through the steps of troubleshooting, and those might be a little bit harder and a little bit more work than you're willing to put into. That is the reality, whether you're using Linux or anything else. It doesn't really quite matter anymore. So I will say that all the problems I've encountered are, firstly, not really an issue that is Linux specific. And secondly, they are very often something that when I engage with them, troubleshooting, I learn more about the system. So that makes my usage of the system more secure, more robust over time. And it helps me learn about the tools that I need to restore it, because I had to do the same thing with Windows. It's just that this has been over 20 years ago that I started that journey, so I am much more secure in what I know, how to do things, right? In 20 years using Linux, I will feel probably exactly the same, and I might have trouble then to still administer Windows machines because I'm no longer professionally working with Windows as an administrator, only as a user. So who knows, in 20 years I might be way more confident and way more capable of using, troubleshooting and fixing a Linux machine than I am with Windows right now. I also, ever since I switched off dual booting, I don't miss Windows anymore. Linux feels like my digital home now, and that is something that I really cherish. I have so many more ways of customizing my system, starting with the taskbar, or the panel as it's called in Linux Mint anyway, to really how Windows interact with each other, like how I dock things, where I do things. Windows always had a little bit of a veneer of customization, but it was never deep. It was very, very ankle deep. There wasn't much that you could do, and the constant pushing of things that you didn't want, like recall, like Copilot, all that kind of stuff. Yes, I use AI, but I don't want it to be integrated in my system. I would like to open a browser tab and type a thing in, maybe, if I really need it, and I don't want it omnipresent. I don't want it in everything and for everything. So having these options, really customizing, only having the things that you want on your system, no bloatware, and no system trying to push things on you, it's an incredible experience. It is really, really, really good. So I will say Linux is mature at this point, really. I don't have problems gaming. It works perfectly fine. Thank you, Steam, honestly. But even without Steam, there are many compatibility layers and systems like Lutris, like Play on Linux, like Bottles, that will help you get your games up and running and working near flawlessly, including newest releases, honestly. I said it in my first video. I played the latter 15 hours of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 pretty much the month it released, and it worked perfectly fine. Partially even better than on Windows. And that is quite impressive to my mind, because much to the displeasure of people in my life, I have also become somewhat of a Linux missionary, honestly. I just keep coming up and I'm like, hey, you know how happy I am with Linux? I'm not even trying to convince them to switch themselves. It's just having had years with Windows and all the pitfalls and all the problems and all the little annoyances that come with it. Linux is such a breeze comparatively now. It's incredible. Once you get it up and running, it's just there. It just does its thing. It's unintrusive. It's not trying anything with you. And you just know that there's no big company that might be trying to spy on absolutely everything you're trying to do on your system. Using something like Flatpak, which is a version of how you can install things on Linux, meaning it comes in a little shell, which has all the dependencies that it might need in itself, so it's not reliant on other things on your system being installed. With something like Flatpak installations, you can use a tool like Flatseal, and then very directly decide what this tool can do. So putting Discord in a Flatpak, I can use Flatseal to directly decide what rights does this particular program have. And it's not just under Windows. You can say, okay, you can use the microphone, you can use the camera, you can use the files. But on Flatseal, I can be like, okay, you have access to this particular file path and nothing else. This confused me for a while because I was trying to pull in funny memes into Discord for my community, and it just didn't work. It never showed the picture until I realized, well, damn, I just didn't have Discord allowed on this file path, and it worked, and it's fantastic. Obviously, it feels like there's another thing I have to set up. You could use the system package, then you don't have to do that. But if you feel like you want to use the Flatpak, you can, and then you have way more control over what these tools are allowed to do on your system. And that, I work with data protection in my professional career, and these granular levels of control are exactly what the GDPR, for example, has been made to enforce, to get companies to give the user control over what's happening. And it's right here. It's there. You have it under Linux. A few closing words on the Linux community, honestly, because they are super supportive. They cheer you on. Sometimes I stream where I have streaming from Linux in my title, and then just people kind of wander in and they're like, hey, you're using Linux, that's amazing. What distro are you on? I'm using this and that, and it's very fun. The one downside I will say though is they keep trying to push you different distros. Like, I'm on Linux Mint. What I want is a stable, long-term stable system that I can customize to the way I need it for my workflows, and then I want this system to do just that. That's what I want. I don't want to tinker around every few months. I don't want to switch distros all the time. But that seems to be a thing in the Linux community, and people just keep coming up to you and they're like, hey, have you tried, I don't know, Pop! OS? Have you tried Arch Linux even? Something like that. And I'm like, no. Well, you should. No, I shouldn't. I don't have to. It's a little bit confusing because sometimes it feels like unless you do distro hopping, you're not quite there yet. You're not quite a part of that community, which it's just kind of weird. So be prepared for that. If you talk to someone about Linux, they will most likely have one or several favorite distributions that they will try and convince you to try out as well. But that's because I can feel this now. Once you find the distro that works for you and does exactly what you need it to do, it's such a better experience than any other system that you have tried before. I guarantee you this. If you make the change, if you're looking to switch to Linux yourself, Linux can run off of a USB stick, which is amazing. So you can try multiple distributions, say Linux Mint, which is what I'm using, Pop! OS, Ubuntu, whatever, and just see what works with you, both with your hardware and with your workflows and how you want to use your system. Just try it out and then decide for one, start it. And if that doesn't quite fit your needs, then hey, there's a multitude to choose from. But once you find the one that you like, you can stop listening. You don't have to switch around. You don't have to switch Linux distributions all the time. You can just be happy with something. That's the magic of it. And I think this is also where it comes from, because this feeling of, yeah, this is exactly how I need it. Oh, you want to give that to other people. You want other people to experience this sense of freedom, this sense of ownership ownership of your own system in a time where everyone's trying to nickel and dime you for all the subscriptions, where people are trying to force you into weird contracts that you sign but never read, which are taking away all your damn rights, even though you just want to, I don't know, look at a funny cat picture. But you can't, because the funny cat picture viewer thing requires you to sign over your firstborn to the CEO of the funny cat picture viewer company. So what are your thoughts? Would you be trying Linux? Have you tried Linux before? Are there any worries or fears that are keeping you from making that step and trying it out and seeing how it works for you? Let me know down in the comments. I would really love to hear your thoughts on it. And if you have any questions about anything I said today in this video, please absolutely down in the comments you go, let me know. If you liked this video, if you liked what I do here and you would like me to do more of this, leave a like, leave a subscription, and check out our Twitch as well. We stream 3 times a week and I would love to have you there. Check out our Discord. All the links are down in the description. I hope you're good. I hope you're well. And I hope to see you sometime soon. Maybe on the Twitch. See you there. Have a good one. Bye-bye.